Welcome to Scene, where the art world meets the real world. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with emerging and established artists to offer a genuine glimpse into their lives and minds, all in an authentic and totally straightforward manner. I'm Carrie Scott, your host. And with 2 decades of experience as a curator and art historian, I firmly believe in the transformative power of art, if it's seen. Okay, I obviously love James Payne. He's a curator, he's a gallerist, he's an art obsessive who's quietly become one of the world's biggest art educators with 1.74 million followers on his YouTube account, Great Art Explained. And what makes him so brilliant is honestly his ability to take the greatest paintings, sculptures, artworks in history and make them feel alive. And I'm going to say something that's going to embarrass him a lot, or maybe hang up the phone, one or the other, is that not since the likes of John Berger have we seen someone so deft at opening up art to the widest possible audience. And I am a giant fan, and we have never met, and he's probably dying inside. But welcome, James Payne.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm very happy with, although I don't believe it, but I'm very happy with John Berger because he's really my ultimate hero. And he was the first time I kind of saw art differently. So I love Berger. So thank you very much. Thank you for that intro.
Right. John Berger is cool. That book, I made someone read it last year who's not an art person. He's a California, Silicon Valley dude. And he was like, I don't get it. What's wrong with you? Why is this your favorite art book? And I was like, seriously?
Wow. Now, I don't know. It's probably in my top 3 or 4 recommending. When I recommend books, it's in my top 3 or 4. I think the thing because, he does everything from that Marxist point of view. And when he talks about landscape paintings being a way of people showing off, it's something just clicked in me, And in fact, I even reread him when I did my film on Gainsborough. So he's way, way up there for me.
Yeah, agreed. So come on, though. How did Great Art Explained even start?
Probably the most circuitous thing I've ever done in my life, and very, very strange because I've always been somehow involved in art, always. So I went to, even as a kid, I was obsessed with art. And I don't come from an art history background. I studied fine art. I studied to become an artist when I was 34. I decided to go to college. I'd never been. And went to Central St. Martin's, studied art. Within 6 months, I knew I was the worst artist in history, maybe the second worst artist in history. And I started curating straight away, like while I was at art school, and eventually would open an art gallery. But I've always financed my love of art with tourism. So I was a tour guide for a long time. So for over 20 years, I was a tour guide taking young North American students around the world. So I would take like a group of American kids to Paris, would take them to the Louvre, and I would talk about the Mona Lisa beforehand. So, and even 20 years ago when I was doing this, I realized 15 minutes is almost enough. And my channel, if people don't know, is called Great Art Explained in 15 minutes. So most of my videos are, explain it in try to explain it in 15 minutes. That's one thing. And then obviously during lockdown, tourism died. Tourism was finished. And I thought I'll just wait it out, and I ended up starting to make films just for fun. That's the only reason, for fun. And I decided to start a YouTube channel just because I watched so much YouTube during lockdown, which I'd never done before. And I didn't do it for the money. I didn't do it as a career. I just did it to keep me occupied, really, So, and my first ever video, which was the Mona Lisa, because honestly, I could honestly talk about the Mona Lisa for 4 or 5 hours easily. I'm just obsessed with that painting. And I did it with my laptop, holding my laptop up to my mouth and recording on the microphone in the laptop because I had no microphone. I didn't know you could buy a microphone. I honestly didn't know anything about it. So I've spent my whole life watching art documentaries, and I spent my whole life going, get out of the way of the painting, stop showing your face on camera. So I never showed my face on camera on YouTube. And it's all accidental. Everything is totally accidental. I talk very slowly on my YouTube channel, and that's purely because I'm trying to remember what I wrote, try to remember my script, and I'm trying to enunciate very clearly. And so when I'm on my YouTube channel, I have this very sleepy voice, and people comment on this. They say it sends them to sleep, which first time someone said that, I was quite upset. But now I love the idea that people are, I'm making people nod off while I'm talking. So those are all accidents. So the 15 minutes was an accident. It's just how I'm used to doing things. And setting up the channel is an accident. Within 3 videos, it was up to 100,000 views, which is, that's your first step on there. Then Stephen Fry tweeted about me, and it just blew up from there, and the thing that people don't get is that everyone wants to start a YouTube channel, everyone wants to make money out of YouTube. But my videos are not that complicated. They're really quite simple. It's taking one work of art, explaining it in 15 minutes. Sometimes I take a lot longer. And just no gimmicks. Really simple. And I think I'm presenting art in a clear it's a compelling language. And I'm sharing this specialist knowledge without dumbing it down. I never dumb down, never patronize. But, I stand by two or three things. One is my channel is aimed at me, someone who spent their whole life in art, or you, Carrie. It's aimed at you as well. But it's also aimed at, in my head, a 15-year-old boy from Wisconsin. I don't know why. I've never been to Wisconsin, but I know there's a kid in Wisconsin who wants to watch my videos. That's one thing. And the other thing is, if I'm going to say postmodern, I know what postmodern is. I know what all these art terms are. Then I explain what postmodern is, because not everyone knows what it is. So simple ideas, and it's trying to make art for everyone and not just for experts. That's what it's for. I want art to be for everyone, and I want to open it up, and I'm happy with how it's gone. That's how it started. Sorry.
There's a couple things. So we know there's no art speak, no gatekeeping, just you're wonderfully clear, you're wonderfully warm as you are here right now. There's obviously deep passion, but there's obviously extensive knowledge here. And you said it. Okay, so you've been given tours, but that's not a traditional role in the art world either, right? I've never heard of someone who gives tours to students, foreign students at that, internationally. So there's something here that you've always had that's I want to show the people that don't get it how to get it, right?
Yeah, I think I've always loved explaining. I've always liked I've always liked the conversation in art, and I feel that's what I want in my videos. I don't want to prescribe a meaning. I want people to think about things, and I want people to have their own ideas as well. And some of the best ideas I ever heard was from 13 or 14-year-old North Americans, on my tours. They were just fantastic. Coming up with, what does Van Gogh mean? What does this painting mean? And some of those ideas are great. And that's what I want. I think I'm really proud of the fact that I have a very positive community that I've set up. And I've encouraged that as well. To have people, there's a lot of negativity involved in social media. We live in a digital age. And I didn't grow up in a digital age, but I know all the negative behind it, but there's also a very positive side to it. And I think that, we're living in a time when all of our attention is fractured and culture is very commodified. And whether we like it or not, we have to accept the fact that we are dealing with people online, But going back to your point earlier on, which I'm not very good at sticking to points, but going back to your point earlier on about me having lots of knowledge, there are several paintings that I've explored in my channel which I didn't know before I started exploring them, and I think that's the joy of it. I'm kind of discovering some paintings and some works of art along with the people I'm talking to. And I didn't study art history. It's all I've always read, but the research is really, really important to me on these films and my book. My book as well. It was the research took 3 years to do that book, because that's where my heart lies, in research. The filmmaking bit is fun.
Did you ever think a book would be part of your story? I mean, my whole life I have wanted to write a book, and I have yet to do it. I'll do it at some point, I'm sure. But was this like on the lifelong checklist for you?
Yeah. I always wanted to write a book. I think everyone says there's a book inside them, and I always did want to write a book, but that wasn't on my agenda. I thought that period of my life had gone, to be totally honest. I've always had lots of ideas for books, but once the channel got successful, I was approached by publishers, so I was approached by 3 publishers, and I eventually went with Thames and Hudson because I totally believed in what they had to say, and I really believe in, and the fact that half of my books are by Thames and Hudson, so but, I'm going to say one thing is I've been doing lots of book festivals recently, and I met a woman who had written 7 books. And I said to her, wow, 7. It took me 3 years to write this book. And it was so stressful. It was the most stressful thing I've ever done. It really was. And she said, yeah, it doesn't get any easier. And I just thought, yeah, maybe just the one then. So we'll see.
Why is it really, as a process, more stressful than putting together the videos?
Because the videos are my opinion, and the book has to be a lot more fact-checked. I think also, I'm not an academic. I never was an academic, but I'm very, very good at research. That's my skill. I think that's my superpower. And luckily for me, I had very, very good editors, so who know where a comma goes and where a comma doesn't go. So it was actually really all-consuming.
How did you pick who you were going to cover?
In the book or in the channel?
In the book.
In the book. I wanted the book to be more inclusive than the channel. So, and I wanted to cover different types of art. So with the channel, you have to know your audience. With the book, some were suggestions from the publishers. Actually, one I took on, but the rest were all my suggestions. I knew that I wanted to cover some of the same artworks that I cover in my channel because I had new information on them. So I wanted to do that. I knew I wanted to cover art from different continents. So I always wanted to do Chinese art. And I also do Ellen Atsui. I do Faith Ringgold. I wanted to have a different range of people. A great example is on my channel, I deal with Rodin, the thinker. And in my book, I deal with Rodin, the kiss. And that gave me an opportunity to revisit Rodin and to look into different aspects of him. So I got it down to 30, but I started with 50. 52, actually, I started with suggestions. And I knew I wanted it to... um, I'm a rambling person. I'm not an A to Z person. I ramble a lot, and I knew I wanted the book to ramble. I've spent my whole life being told to stop fidgeting, to stop moving, and I wanted my book to be a fidget, to jump from one thing to the next. Um, have a progression, have a link, but be their own chapters in the same way my films are their own film,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Well, it does. And it worked because when I got a little advanced copy, thank you very much, um, I went straight to the chapters. First was like, how many women are represented? And thank you. You did a very good job there. And then I immediately went to a chapter that's on Suzanne Valadon, who is an artist I've never heard of.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I think I wanted my channel percentage wise has more female films than most museums have paintings, so I wanted that anyway. And I wanted it even more so with my book. Susan Valadon is one of the most incredible women in art history. She was very well connected with Renoir, with her son was Utrillo, and she was just a really, in their character. And I love that whole period in Montmartre. And I love that self-portrait by her is so shocking almost. To this day, just look at it. She doesn't give a crap about what you think of her. And she's a great artist. And, I wanted her in the book because I wanted Picasso in the book. They're all interconnected in some way. There's a link in there some way. Van Gogh, all those people who were around Montmartre in that period. Dali
mm.
even.
Can you talk just a little bit about the Blue Room? Because I loved that you compared it directly to Manet's Olympia, which is a work that I've written about a bit and talked about a bit because of a relationship with an artist.
Well, the Blue Room was a painting that a self-portrait she did. She did many, many self-portraits. As we know, women in art tend to do a lot of self-portraits. They use themselves as models. Gentileschi, for example, would use herself again and again, and so did Valadon. And she, by the point she did this painting, she had a much younger lover. She knew everyone everywhere, and it's a painting where, like Olympia, it's a woman lying down, looking towards the camera, except Valadon is clothed, except Valadon is not a sexual object at all. Like not even remotely sexual, which I find really fascinating as a painting. And she's got all these symbols around her. Instead of being, a prostitute, she's an intellectual woman with a book by her side, with a cigarette in her mouth, and she, I think it's the not caring that I love so much about that particular painting. And also, technically, it was in the Pompidou Center 3 or 4 months ago. Technically, it's the colors are spectacular. It jumps out at you, the fabrics and everything. So, yeah, it's a great painting, and she was a great artist.
But this is the thing that I love that you do. And I meant it at the top of the thing. Like, I obviously love James Payne because you're brilliant. But you make us look again or discover things or think again. And I was about to get cross with you because after that, the next chapter is on Georgia O'Keeffe, and your title is, I think, intentionally provocative, but it's like the sexualization of Georgia O'Keeffe. And I was like, no, James, no, not you too. Please don't do it. And then you get to sort of page 2 and you raise all the issues around this, which is she did not want these works to stand in for vulvas.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really, really clear that mine is not the definitive view, or dictating a single correct reading. I think my channel, and now my book is about encouraging curiosity. And I think taking someone like Georgia O'Keeffe and looking at how Stieglitz was really the man who sexualized her, and I think some of the points I'm looking at in my book fascinate me. I think the fact that Rodin didn't really sculpt his own work, that he had a factory going and everyone else was making it for him. The fact that they're still making Rodins now, which are called an original Rodin. They really are, the Musée de Rodin does this. I just find that fascinating. Until I started reading a lot about Monet, I didn't know that. You just don't realize that this guy lived so long that, he was around for the invention of the motor car. He was at the beginning of the invention of photography. He was one of the guys who got the first speeding ticket in France. He was just, and then of course he lived through the First World War, and he's painting during the First World War. So why on earth doesn't that connect with his work? Because it does. It does. We're in the middle of this chaotic world and artists are reflecting that. And that's what all of these artists do. No matter whether Monet was the most famous artist in the world, which he probably was at the time. I think if we show the social, the historical, the emotional dimensions of work, like in particularly with Georgia O'Keeffe, who I'm such a huge fan of. I've been to her house and been to her ranch and everything. But I think looking at those dimensions, it opens a space for viewers, to form their own connections. That's what it's about, I think. And that freedom of interpretation is the key, I think, to democratizing art. I talk about democratizing art a lot. And I think that's the key, is giving people the power to interpret themselves, because I'm not right. You're not right. We're not all right, and I think that's what art can do. It can make people look again. I think looking at Monet in the context of World War One, the First World War, changes how we view Monet.
Mm. And for me, with Georgia O'Keeffe, it was going to that part of the world and thinking about this woman who was alone traveling back then. And it just completely changed the entire landscape of her work for me. So you're right. It's those little nuggets and handing them to people so that they can sort of unpack the layers as they might like to.
And I think also I have the luxury of going to Georgia O'Keeffe's house. I have the luxury of going to New Mexico because I can afford it now. I've been working a long time. But my thinking is I want that kid in Wisconsin to go to Georgia O'Keeffe's ranch, and that's where I'm taking him,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you and I, look, we're singing from the same song sheet, I think, because I often say to people, and I don't know why it's Minnesota, but for me, it's a girl in Minnesota who will never get to the Louvre, or will come to Frieze and meet the contemporary artists that I'm sort of trying to highlight. And it's talking to them. And mine was born out of watching my children, who are mountain bike obsessed, and we live in London, find these mountain bike experts who were explaining what a berm is. And I was sat there being like, why don't we have these people in the art world? Like, why are there no experts on YouTube? And then quite literally, as I said it, I think you popped up on my Instagram feed and I was like, oh, there's this person. And I love that it's now, I'm going to hold up the book because it's magnificent and bright and colorful and cheery and all the things that you want it to be. It's also like really heavy and feels significant, which is awesome. But so my question to you, though, would be, what's next? Is it going to be like, are you going to go to the Beeb and be our next burger? What are you gonna? Are we gonna have a mini series, or are we sticking to YouTube?
I don't think so. I think first of all, I can't do anything else. I'm just exhausted. I really am. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is take December and January off for the first time in my life. Before YouTube, I worked 6 months of the year. Now I pretty much Well, actually, I was. I worked on Christmas morning, before everyone woke up. I just thought I have to finish this thing, So it has become an obsession. Then I started my other channel, which was Great Books Explained, which was always my dream, actually, to do literature. And I don't think there's room for anything else. I'm not really interested in, I never showed my face until this book came out. I'm not interested really. But I'm promoting this book because it's something I really, really believe in. I really do. It's at this stage of my life, it's just something that I want to promote. And I don't really want to do anything else. There will be a second book for sure. But I've already told everyone that I want to wait a year. Until my memory is gone of what I wanted to do. But next is I'm working on a film about a Russian artist. I am working. I usually work on 4 or 5 projects at the same time. So I'm working on that. I am working on a female artist who I haven't announced yet. I am working on Jacques-Louis David, another huge hero of mine, and he has a show opening on October in the Louvre, and he did that beautiful painting of Napoleon. And so I'm doing a whole series of works about propaganda, series of films about propaganda. So starting with the Russian one. I can't say too much in case I get assassinated, and and then a few more. So I'd say I've got enough projects to keep me going till the end of next year.
Do the galleries now call you up and say, "Hey, we've got an opening with such and such in 2 years. Can you do something for us?"
No. I think I just kind of always know what's going on. I listen to you, Carrie. That's how I know what's going on. So it's true. It's like, you find out what galleries are happening. And that kind of inspires me to go on to find out more. I think Jacques-Louis David was always on my radar. I always wanted to do him. And then someone said, there's a show opening at the Louvre. And I was like, I don't do it to coincide, but why not? I mean, a great example is recently I did a video on Jose Maria Velasco, Mexican painter, and I'd never heard of him, but I made a film about him, because the National Gallery, the curator of the National Gallery, contacted me and said, would you make a 1-minute Instagram film for me? And so I was like, hey, I love this guy. Why don't I make a 15-minute film? Hieronymus Bosch came about because I asked the viewers of my channel who they would like me to do, and they came up with this. I didn't know anything about Hieronymus Bosch apart from 3 or 4 facts, so it's a joy to do that.
Wild. That is not who I would have thought people wanted to hear about.
Oh yeah, especially young boys. They love Hieronymus Bosch.
I mean, of course they do. I have 2 young boys. I can imagine.
Yeah, horror, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, it's So next, Carrie, I don't really know. I'm afraid. I've just got all these projects lined up, and at some point, I'm just going to say stop, take 2 months off, and then see how it goes from there. For now, it's all about the book.
I think clearly the name of the game with you is just follow your gut, because you can't go wrong. The YouTube is fabulous. The book is fabulous. It comes out on October the 2nd, right?
Yeah, October the 2nd in the UK and October the 14th in the US and worldwide. So, yeah, it's
on my birthday.
Oh, hooray! Happy birthday! So, so it's I've never been prouder than writing this book, because it was much harder than anything I've ever done. But, when you work really hard at something and you love something, when it comes to fruition, it's just like a dream from heaven,
I get it. I really get it. And you should be proud of it, because I think it's
you.
epic. And I'm sure everyone else will too. Thank you, James Payne.
Thank you.
Thanks Thanks for listening to this episode of the Scene Podcast. If you liked what you heard, I'd love it if you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to connect with us between episodes, follow us on Instagram at WatchSceneArt. I'm Carrie Scott, and I'll see you next time. Get it?